Good morning. Welcome to the May 23rd Housing and Community Development Authority meeting, board meeting. Welcome, everyone. It's good to be here and so good to see the board. Hey, we got a meeting. Thank you. Chief of Staff, is there a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, there is.
All right. I am calling the May 2019 meeting of the IHCDA Board of Directors to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from April 25th, 2019 board meeting. Are there any questions, corrections, or additions from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Please welcome Danny Miller to discuss our Home Investment Partnership Program Award recommendations. Good morning.
Good morning. All right. My name is Danny Miller. I'm the real estate production analyst for the northern region of the state. I'm here today to recommend funding for our 2018-2019 home rental round. The Home Investment Partnership Program provides funding for new construction and rehabilitation of affordable rental housing for low to moderate income households. Each fiscal year, a minimum of 15% of our home funds must be allocated to certified community housing development organizations, or CHODOs. CHODOs are IHCDA certified nonprofit housing organizations that meet the home regulations related to CHODOs. Certified CHODOs are eligible to request an additional $500,000 over the maximum $1 million grant amount. CHODOs are also eligible to request additional funds to use as an operating supplement when developing a home-funded project. The 2018-2019 home round was a competitive rental round only. Applications were due on or before March 4th, 2019. Prior to the application deadline, the real estate production staff hosted webinars during which changes to the application policy were discussed and technical assistance was provided. Each application received by IHCDA was checked for completeness and to determine whether all threshold requirements were met. Each application was also scored by reviewers based on the requirements outlined in the home rental application policy. Each applicant was given the opportunity to respond to staff questions regarding its application. Only projects having scored equal or greater than the minimum score of 63 were eligible to receive funding this round. IHCDA received a total of 10 rental applications for a total request of $11,336,750. 6 applicants requested to be certified as CHODOs and for CHODO operating support dollars. Of the 10 applications received, 8 applications included requests for development fund loans. Today, the real estate production team is very proud to be recommending all 10 of the home rental applications for a total allocation of $11,336,750. 8 of those applications are being recommended to receive development fund loans for a total of $2,750,550. And 6 of the 7 applicants were certified as CHODOs and are being recommended to receive CHODO operating supplement funds for a total of $300,000. You can find a list of the projects we are recommending for funding in Exhibit A, and Exhibit B shows where the recommended projects are located. Our team is really proud of being able to recommend all 10 of our applications this round, and to highlight the hard work that our nonprofit applicants have done, we would like to go through a quick presentation, just a high-level overview of the projects. So here we go. All right, so here's our timeline. Like I mentioned, applications were due in March, and we took kind of the whole month of March and April to review all 10 applications. So I already said that. All right, so we have a really nice distribution of projects throughout the state, which is great. A couple in the central and north, and then several down in the southern region. So first, and these are in order of highest scoring. So our first project is Apple Orchard Apartments in Harrison County, with our top score of 88, requesting $1.5 million, also with a development fund request, and we were able to certify them as a CHODO. That's Blue River Services, creating 14 new construction units. Next, we've got Aberdeen Woods Phase 7, We've been working with New Hope Development Services on this phase development for a while. $666,000 of home, also development fund, and a Chodo operating supplement. Just a note about Chodo operating supplements, only organizations can be certified as a Chodo. And so like New Hope Development Services, we are recommending funding for 4 of their projects, but we can only tie that operating supplement to one project since it goes to the organization. So we just tied that to this project. And that is in Jeffersonville. Also in Jeffersonville with New Hope Development Services is River's Edge, a larger project, 39 total units, with a large home request and development fund request. It's a rehab project. Next, we've got Beverly Apartments in Valparaiso with housing opportunities. This is going to be the rehab of 11 units, converting those to affordable units. And then down in Scottsburg, again with New Hope Development Services, this is Highland Woods. This is going to be the demolition and new construction of 11 affordable units for seniors. Then up in Goshen, we have West Plains 2 with La Casa. This is going to be the new construction of 10 total units. They are going to do a duplex as well as 8 apartment units next to their first phase of permanent supportive housing. And then with Hamilton Area Neighborhood Development, or HAND, they are expanding their service area, which we're super happy about, going up into Tipton for new construction of 9 affordable units. And Highland Place, which is New Hope Development Services again, 16 units down in Scottsburg. And then finally, Flats of Oakland City with Community Action Program of Evansville. This is going to be the rehab of this historic building in downtown Oakland City, producing 9 total affordable units. So that was our super quick overview of our projects. The key performance indicators we are tracking this round are listed on page 3 of your packet. The first one is tracking the total number of rental units produced with home funds, including number of units that target special populations. The really important thing to note here is in the past we've done 2 home rounds per year in 2016 and 2017, producing around 130 to 155 units. This year we're only doing 1 round and we've produced nearly as many units as we have in the past with 2 rounds. We believe that's due to our team's encouraged technical assistance in working with these groups through their applications, as well as improving our policy and our application forms. Also, just doing 1 round a year really gives groups the time to prepare a successful application. We'll also be tracking the number of certified CHODOs throughout the state. With the help of our AmeriCorps Public Ally Judy Denby, we've increased the number of CHODOs across the state as well as the capacity of our existing CHODOs. We anticipate the number of our CHODOs to increase with the next home round, which begins in December of 2019. And then our third KPI is tracking development benchmarks, which include when a project receives release of funds, when they start and complete construction, when they draw their funds, inspections, and lease up, just making sure that these groups are using the funds in a timely manner and getting the units built in a timely manner as well. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have about our home rental round.
Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Mark, go ahead.
So Dan, did you say how many units you were doing with this particular round?
130 total units this
That's
round.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. And remind me, so the home program, do you have an amount set aside for rental and the balance will just go to home ownership in terms of what's used, or is there? 'Cause there's a
We do
1-to-1.
have an amount set aside. We've got about $4 million in the pipeline right now that's not allocated to projects that are currently coming in for funding. And then our action plan, we usually set aside about $2 million for home buyer, and then the rest for rental. And then if the home buyer funds don't get used, we convert that to rental.
Congratulations to you and your team on the effort you did to put this
Thank
together.
you.
I really like seeing the projects on the screen. That's
Yeah, we're
helpful.
really excited about this round for sure, so, thank you.
Any additional questions? I think we're ready for your resolution.
All right. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolutions. Resolved that the board approve home funding in a form of grants in an aggregate amount not to exceed $11,336,750 to the applicants as set forth in Table A and Exhibit A as recommended by staff.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Resolve that the board approve development fund loans in an aggregate amount not to exceed $2,750,550 to the applicants as set forth in Table A and Exhibit A as recommended by staff.
We have a resolution. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And resolve that the board approve the home Chodo operating supplement funding in an aggregate amount not to exceed $300,000 to the applicants as set forth in Table A and Exhibit A as recommended by staff.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not leaving yet.
Okay, I think you now have a recommendation for the 2017 Supportive Housing Institute, Plymouth Permanent Supportive Housing.
So IHCDA partners with the Corporation for Supportive Housing to offer the Indiana Supportive Housing Institute. The Institute provides training and technical assistance to help supportive housing partners learn how to navigate the complex process of developing housing with supportive services to prevent and end homelessness. Through a request for proposals issued in September of 2016, 5 teams were ultimately selected to participate in the 2017 Institute. The Institute provided over 80 hours of targeted training and technical assistance to the development teams. Teams who successfully graduated from the 2017 Institute are eligible to apply for funding on a non-competitive rolling basis through IHCDA's Home Investment Partnerships Program, the National Housing Trust Fund, as well as the Indiana Affordable Housing and Community Development Fund. Teams can also apply for project-based vouchers through IHCDA. Garden Court Incorporated, a 2017 Institute graduate, submitted an application for Home and Housing Trust Fund funding for Plymouth Supportive Housing in January of 2019. IHCDA staff reviewed the application for threshold requirements and scoring. Plymouth is the new construction of 4 one-bedroom, 10 two-bedroom, and 4 three-bedroom permanent supportive housing units in Plymouth, Marshall County, Indiana. 13 units will serve households at or below 30% AMI, and 5 units will serve households at or below 50% AMI who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of being homeless. Supportive services will be provided by the Bowen Center and St. Joseph Health System. The development team of Garden Court has also worked very closely with the City of Plymouth and Marshall County to secure additional funding for this project, for a total development cost of $2,858,000. And then the main key performance indicators we'll be tracking in relation to this project is the number of rental units we've produced through the 2017 Permanent Supportive Housing Institute. With the 18 units of Plymouth included, we're currently at 114 units of permanent supportive housing units, which is great. The second KPI we're tracking is the change in numbers during the next Plymouth and Marshall County point-in-time counts. And for reference, that's kind of a snapshot of people currently homeless, living in a shelter, not in stable housing at a certain point of time during the year, typically in January. So the last data that we have shows the 2017 point-in-time count just for Plymouth alone was 17 people. Plymouth has a population of about 9,000 folks. So definitely a big need in Plymouth, so we're going to be tracking those numbers. And then lastly, we'll be tracking the development benchmarks, release of funds, start and completion of construction, funds drawn, inspection, and lease up. So with that, happy to answer any questions about Plymouth Permanent Supportive Housing.
Any questions for Danny?
More comment, Madam Chair, than a question. Permanent Supportive Housing, Jake's been around about 10 years now, the Institute, more or less. I think it'd be neat to see a board update sometime in 2019, just on, as you're thinking about what updates to provide to the board, because I think you've got a really good story to tell.
So yeah, Mark, you're right. The Institute was launched in 2008. The 10th Institute, so there was 1 year it was taken off, is currently going on. It'll wrap up in June. And then the board update in June will be Zach Gross, our permanent support housing manager, will be giving an update on what happened in this year's Institute, but also a 10-year look back.
Perfect. Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think This is amazing. I think you've got a long story, and not just tell the board, but just find a way to tell, obviously, the message to your constituents about the work you're doing with the PSH. That's great.
That was Matt Rayburn, by the way. He didn't introduce himself.
We all know who he is. Any questions? I think we're ready for your resolution,
All
Danny.
right. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolutions. Resolve the board approve awarding home funding in a form of a grant in an amount not to exceed $1 million to Garden Court, Inc., as recommended by staff.
We have a resolution before us. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Resolve that the board approve awarding National Housing Trust Fund funding in the form of a grant in an amount not to exceed $787,500 to Garden Court, Inc., as recommended by staff.
We have a resolution before us. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Please welcome Jeff Zangolowitz. Did I get it?
Perfect, yeah. You said it better than I do.
Thank you. And you're here to discuss a recommendation regarding the project-based voucher awards for Plymouth Permanent Supportive Housing.
Yeah,
Welcome.
so that is the, good morning, that's the same project that Danny just presented on. In addition to the Home and Housing Trust Fund awards, we will be making, or we request a project-based voucher award for this property. The project-based voucher award ensures that the property have the rental assistance subsidy needed to operate throughout the 15-year compliance period of the project, because with the chronically homeless population that it is targeting, it requires rental assistance for these extremely low-income individuals that frequently do not have income to pay towards their rent. The project-based voucher program that we operate, HUD authorizes us to utilize up to 30% of our housing choice voucher allocation to designate towards project-based vouchers each year. That 30% number is only if those units are also receiving or offered supportive services, which through the permanent supportive housing program we are able to do. So the gross annual rent listed on this board memo, those represent the maximum amount, possible subsidy. In reality, a little bit lower than that, as tenants are responsible for putting 30% of their income towards their rent, and then we will pick up the remaining portion of the rent. So this project came through the 2017 Institute, as Danny mentioned. It's 18 units. There are 4 3-bedroom units, which is a little bit larger than we typically see in these project-based vouchers. So hopefully that will allow the project to service some chronically homeless families in the area. At this time, key performance indicators for this project. We will be tracking the utilization of the awarded vouchers by the property, ensuring that they're being utilized by the chronically homeless population that is stated as their target population. We will be tracking the total number of chronically homeless households served by the vouchers, and then tracking the compliance of the project throughout the 15-year award agreement. Can you take any questions?
Do we have any questions for Jeff, board members? If not, we're ready for your resolution.
All right. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolutions. Resolved, that the board approve an award of 18 project-based vouchers to Garden Court, Inc. for Plymouth Supportive Housing for a period of 15 years based on the annual fair market rents for Marshall County as recommended by staff.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
But you're continuing.
Yes.
Correct.
The second award I have today is for Fieldhouse Apartments, which is located in Anderson, Indiana. This award came through the 2016 Permanent Supportive Housing Institute and was awarded tax credits in 2017. This property, this award will be for 44 vouchers, 42 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom properties. The target population is chronically homeless individuals. And the key performance indicators that we'll be tracking are the utilization of the awarded vouchers by the property, total number of chronically homeless households served by the vouchers, and compliance of the project throughout the 15-year award agreement. Not to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Jeff? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff.
I never actually read the recommendation.
Oh. Now we're ready for your recommendation.
Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolutions. Resolved that the board approve an award of 44 project-based vouchers to Black and White Investment LLC for the Fieldhouse Apartments for a period of 15 years, based on the annual fair market rents for Madison County as recommended by staff.
Well, I don't know if the last vote means that you all are just do whatever I ask, or if we're all out of practice, but I'll entertain a motion now for approval.
Oh, again, so moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Please welcome Matt Rayburn to discuss a recommendation regarding the Anchor Employer Workforce Housing Demonstration Program.
Yes. Well,
Welcome,
good
Matt.
morning, board. Now that I'm not just a ghostly voice from the back of the room, I'll introduce myself for those on camera. I'm Matt Rayburn, Deputy Executive Director and Chief Real Estate Development Officer with IHCDA. And we're excited to bring today what we think is a very innovative initiative, something different than what IHCDA has done before. So we're always proud to bring forward recommendations for our existing programs, and we spend a lot of time making sure we're running those programs as well as possible. But we also like to run new initiatives when we can and tackle really, really timely issues. And one of those timely issues that we're really running into as we speak with communities throughout the state, and I know, Lieutenant Governor, you've been running into this as well as you travel the state, is the need for workforce housing in communities. So as we're talking with local units of government, with employers throughout the state, we know that there are great job opportunities in Indiana, that our unemployment is low, but that in many of those communities there is a lack of connection between the availability of jobs and the availability of affordable housing options. So we have been working throughout the year, as the board knows, on really focusing on 2019 and launching a variety of different initiatives to tackle this workforce housing issue from different perspectives. So last month, for example, Chris Neville's brought to you our modular housing initiative, which was our first new innovative program for workforce housing, which was about using blight elimination lots and building modular housing on those to increase the stock of single-family homes. So this is our second initiative that we've been working on. Jake and I have been working on this for most of the year, trying to get this program launched, and we're pleased to present it to you today. So this second initiative around workforce housing is really focused on what is the role that those anchor employers in the community, those employers who do have the jobs and are struggling to house their workers, what role can they play in working with us on being a part of the solution? So the most exciting thing I think about this initiative is it is IHCDA, by launching what we're calling the Anchor Employer Workforce Housing Demonstration Program, IHCDA is looking to partner for the first time ever with these large employers. So this will be a new partner that we are seeking out. So I'll explain quickly kind of our idea behind this. So we have drafted a request for proposals, and that RFP was included in the board packet for your review. What you're voting on today is really just the approval of us launching the initiative, but we provided that RFP for context for you. So our goal would be to get that RFP out the first week of June, and through that RFP process, we would be looking to select anchor employers throughout the state, and we have defined anchor employers as employers who have been operating in their target geography for at least 5 years, and they need to be one of the top 10 employers in that geography. And we have easy access to that data on top employers by county in most cases, and we often use that actually in other programs as well when we're scoring if our affordable housing investments are going to be close to job opportunities. So these anchor employers, if they meet our anchor employer definition, they can apply through the program. The employer themselves will be the respondent to the RFP. And what they're really responding to is to say that they are interested in entering into a public-private partnership with IHCDA, where both the anchor employer and IHCDA would come in and invest in workforce housing in their community. So this would be, IHCDA would say we would be willing per employer to invest up to $1 million. We have $4 million of IHCDA discretionary funds set aside for this initiative. So if we went in with $1 million, the anchor employer would need to at least match, they could exceed if they wanted, that investment. And we would then work with that employer on two things. One, they're going to be identifying what is the workforce housing need specific to our community. In some communities, that may be single-family homes for sale. In some communities, it could be rental housing. In some communities, it may be building out infrastructure so that housing could later be developed. So it's really them telling us what is missing in their community to promote workforce housing. Once they develop that strategy on here's the critical thing we want to invest in, then we'll work with them on an investment plan. And the real key behind this program is that IHCDA, we intend through this program to get repaid. This is an investment, not a grant. But the terms of that investment is really going to be based on the risk that the employer is willing to take. So we would go in and match. We'll be entering into a partnership where we share risk and return with the investor. So assuming the project is successful, which we believe they will be, both the employer and IHCDA would be repaid at equal terms. But if for some reason a project did go south, the risk would be shared between IHCDA and the employer equally. It would not fall just on IHCDA. So it's really asking these employers to go outside of their comfort zone by making investments in housing and by partnering with IHCDA and not looking at us as someone who should be taking all the risk, but saying we need to be a part of the solution and be willing to take risk in our communities to solve this issue. So we think that that is a very innovative approach, but we know there will be challenges for the employers. Many of them have never really thought about housing or how to put together a housing plan. So once we select the employers through the RFP process, we will be putting all those selected employees, we'll be bringing them together as a cohort. And that cohort will be expected to go through a workshop this fall. And then all throughout 2020, we'll be doing ongoing calls and meetings between that cohort. We'll expect the different employers to host in their communities, and they'll all be getting together frequently to share best practices, to share challenges, and to make sure that they're all kind of moving ahead. We know that we understand the housing side well, but IHCDA is not an expert in workforce development. So we have brought along for this initiative Thomas P. Miller and Associates, and Holly from TPMA is here today to support our initiative. TPMA really has a great expertise in working on community development initiatives, but also a very strong background in workforce development. So we have selected them as a consultant to work with us on this project. What they will be doing is they'll be helping us put on that workshop this fall, and then they will be providing one-on-one assistance to the selected employers throughout 2020 to help those employers put together their final project concept and the investment strategy that they'll be working on with IHCDA. So we believe they have really good credentials to help us launch this initiative, and we've worked successfully with TPMA in the past on our most current strategic plan they were our consultant on, as well as some grant writing that they helped us achieve some HUD grants last year. So this is going to be a really good partnership. We're trying to tackle this not only from the housing angle, but from the workforce development angle. And we think that this could really be a model that could help those employers realize the role they can play in housing and hopefully be a replicable model that we could continue to try or that other states may be able to try. So we're not aware of any states that have done this. Jake and I have kind of done the research in the field, and we don't think there are any state housing finance agencies across the country that have tried partnering with anchor employers. And there's going to be a lot to learn. I'm sure there's questions I may not be able to answer for you today because this definitely is a demonstration program, but we're excited to be the first in the country to try this initiative, and we believe that public-private partnership is going to really have an impact. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have about this initiative.
Well, first of all, I can't tell you how proud I am of you all for stepping up and putting forth a program that really is going to go a long way, hopefully, towards solving our workforce housing issue that employers are experiencing all over the state. So on behalf of Governor Holcomb, and I thank you all for, this project.
Absolutely. And, I know one of the questions that in the previous recommendations that we had, with Danny and Jeff, they were presenting specific KPIs about a project. We don't have those in that memo at this point because really there will be a couple levels of key performance indicators with this initiative. One will be at the higher level at the program. Really for us right now, success is going to be our anchor employers willing to bite at this. We're putting out an RFP and wanting employers to voluntarily work with IHCDA. So part of the success is going to be, do we attract people to this RFP, and can we identify employers who are willing to go out on a limb and try this? And then if we do, will those employers be able to come to terms with us and enter into that investment strategy? So high level, part of the success we'll be measuring is just, are anchor employers willing to try this? As far as the specific projects that they implement in their communities, at that point, we'll be bringing their recommendations back to the board. So you're not authorizing any actual funding today or delegating authority to us. When those teams come up with their local workforce housing need that they want to fund and enter into an investment plan with us on, we'll be bringing those back for each individual employer, one-on-one to the board as they are ready next year to authorize the investment of up to $1 million. So at that time, we'll know more about what that employer, what that community is trying to tackle, and we'll be working with them, and TPMA will be helping them as well to set project-specific metrics that they'll be tracking. So we know that's a kind of an unanswered question right now, is what will success look like? But as we figure out more of those investment strategies, each team will be defining success for their community and for their employer.
Great. Any questions for me?
So, prior to the RFPs, we've not received a phone call or anything from employers saying, hey, can you guys help out on something? Have we?
Yeah, so we have had some discussions with some employers, sharing with them the high level concept and getting some feedback from them to say, are we on the right track? And from those conversations we've had, those employers have all said that we're on the right track.
Oh, good.
And that they're interested.
So
That
you've
doesn't mean that
tested the
they-
waters
We
a
have
little
tested the
bit.
waters,
Okay.
yes. And it's kind of those key points of risk sharing and, one-for-one investment. What type of different strategies could they come up with? Because one of the things I think is really important here is we're not looking to have one investment strategy for all four. We're looking for a variety of different types of investment strategies. As Matt was talking about, home ownership, infrastructure, rental, and there's a lot of different ways in which you can invest in those types of developments. And how would we do that? And how would we come to terms with an employer to do that? So they've been very high level. So it will be interesting to see, because the RFP is written to encourage a lot of thought into this, and be interesting to see what type of thought we get back and what kind of proposals we get back from them. So.
Yeah. And to that point, it really is crafted as a request for proposals, not just for qualifications. So the selection will be partially based on the qualifications of the organization to provide the matching funds to go in with us. So we'll be looking at their capacity. But it really is the selection coming down to how are you quantifying workforce housing needs in your community, and what proposal do you have to address that? So we know that those proposals will be tweaked over time as they work with our consultants and with us through the workshop, but they are expected as part of the RFP to identify their preliminary concept, and that will be a big part of the selection.
Matt, I think you answered there at the end some of the questions I think Di had. You anticipated those in terms of like what the objectives are for IHCDA to get out of those macro level KPIs. So I think I hear you saying we're really approving today just a very kind of the broad brush program structure. You're really approving kind of an idea generation. Like the RFP is intended to
Correct.
go generate to see if there's any ideas out there. And I think if I read the RFP right, you have the ability not to pick anyone or to pick,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yep.
you're not.
The
this
board is
isn't-
not committing $4 million today. You are authorizing us to
Go forth.
release an RFP to see who out there is interested. And then before we took funding, again, the funding recommendations would come with each employer, ideally in 2020, if the initiative moves forward. And at that time, we would have more project-specific information about, who is the employer, what is the housing concept that they're doing, what is our investment strategy, what is the risk to IHCDA. So we'd have that detail, and that's what the board would ultimately be voting on next year, is if we want to enter into those agreements with each selected employer. So our strategy, and just I know this is a little off topic from this particular memo, but one thing we've been trying to do recently, and so this was similar with Chris's modular RFP last month, we're trying to do a better job at bringing board memos like this to the board to make you aware up front of initiatives we're trying to launch. We could have just next year brought you a funding recommendation to say we want to give $1 million to this employer, and you would have said, what the heck is this initiative? So our goal is to this is really just us being more transparent to the board to say, we want you to know we've been planning this initiative, and we'd like your initial thumbs up to go that way, but we'll absolutely keep you informed and do more normal board recommendations next year for the funding recommendations.
I appreciate the level of innovation, and I think,
Yeah.
I can't speak for the rest of the board, certainly appreciate from the treasurer's office just the perspective and the opportunity to look at programs as they start to come over the transom. And I think that as you develop the KPI, I know it says in here, IHCDA will kind of let the projects define their own KPI. I would love your level of oversight and insight on ensuring that affordability still remains in the equation, even though it's not maybe traditionally affordable in the federal definition, but that it still kind of meets the spirit of the intention
And that's a
of this
good point,
agency.
Mark, and I don't know how detailed you read the RFP itself, but, you know, we're not going to intend to enforce lien restrictions like we
Right.
would on a tax credit development or a home development, or to use maybe a HUD-defined rent and income limit. But we do specifically say in here that any housing that's developed through this, that they have to work with us on setting kind of reasonable standards on, as we look at this really is about workforce housing, that that the RFP does specifically allow IHCDA to work with them on establishing reasonable sale prices, reasonable rent limits, whatever it may be, depending on the housing type. So we will definitely be making sure that this is an affordable entry-level point for the workforce housing population, and that prices don't get out of control through this. Yeah.
Any additional questions, comments? Yes.
I'd like to see just some communication with DWD as you go forward and just what responses you're getting and if this works, you know, maybe get some.
Absolutely, yeah, and so we do intend to
Yeah.
make sure DWD is aware of all of this.
We've briefed
initiatives,
them on
and
it.
They've been
Yes,
briefed.
they've been briefed, yeah.
I think we're still thinking through what role they may have in the workshop, and we know that Thomas P. Miller and Associates has a good working relationship with workforce development, and will be able to help us even build that relationship better. But
Great.
we agree, we need to have them involved with this.
Any additional comments, questions?
Pioneer,
We're ready?
pioneer program.
Yes?
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is exciting.
Very good.
We're ready for your resolution.
Excellent. All right. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve the IHCDA Anchor Employer Workforce Housing Demonstration Program as recommended by staff.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Home ownership update. Please welcome Rich Harcourt to provide our home ownership update. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Board. June in Indiana is Home Ownership Month, and we place a lot of emphasis on what we do with home ownership. And as you all know, home ownership is a huge part of what our organization does. We do a significant amount of helping first-time home buyers and second-time home buyers achieve housing in Indiana. And we do that in a number of different ways, to include issuing debt and buying mortgages, as well as selling mortgages in a secondary market. And as June comes up, a handful of things have changed. The market that, as you all know, the mortgage market is a dynamic and moving market. It's not there's a lot of changes in it. There's a lot of changes in funding in it. And so we as an organization have to move with that market in order to continue to provide, fulfill our primary mission of helping homeowners. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some new products, some changes to products that we want to introduce in June. But really, there are three things that I want to get accomplished today, if we could, as we enter into Home Ownership Month. And the first is, I want to introduce the team that helps us. So we have internal folks here, as well as an entire external team that helps us access capital markets whenever we go to market. The second thing I want to do is explain again in this presentation, is explain again at a real high level what we do, how the markets work, and how we monetize loans, whether we own them or whether we sell them. And then lastly, will be to ask you to approve the second resolution of the year for us to continue to finance mortgages for our end constituents, our end users. So first of all, I want to introduce the team that helps us. And internally, our home ownership team is led by Kim Harris. Lee McClendon, are you here, Lee? Lee is our longest tenured employer at 27 years with us, and Tom Pearson. So three of the folks that help us internally manage that business. And then we have a much larger team in the back that represents the folks that help us access capital markets. And I think it's important for you to know them because many of them have been with us a long time and just provide excellent guidance. But from a banker standpoint, we go back and forth between two banks. We go between RBC and JP Morgan. We rotate who our bankers are. The 2019B issue that I'll ask you to approve later will be led by JP Morgan this time, and that's Jeff Gertz. And Jeff Sula from RBC, who led 2019A, is here. And then our financial advisor, the folks that really help us manage the portfolios, manage the debt issues, make recommendations, help us with structure. We have two from CFX out of New York, Jeremy and Nick. And Jeremy will be leading the presentation, kind of walking us through the business, the changes, and what the capital markets look like. We also have, as you know, we don't do much variable rate financing, but we do have some, and so we have our swap advisor here, Peter Cleric. And then we have bond counsel, who are our longtime bond counsel, who's worked with us, Tyler Kalachnik, and Tyler, who else do you have with us? Chris here and Michael Allen, okay. And then we have underwriters counsel here, Barnes and Thornburg, Rich Starkey and Portia Bailey. So that's the team that helps and guides us. And then Jeremy, if you would like to kind of walk folks through an overview of what we do and how we do it. Jeremy Obadich, CFX.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning. I'm Jeremy Obadich from CFX, financial advisor, municipal advisor to IHCDA. And what we want to talk about a little bit today is give you an update on the home ownership program and talk a little bit about both the history, where we've come from over the last 10 years, and where we are today, and what the challenges and opportunities are that we see for IHCDA. So, I'm just gonna click this. This is, we've got 19 slides here, so I'm gonna be respectful of the board's time and try to keep this at a very high level. But please stop me if there's something that I'm going through a little bit too fast. Please slow me down. I will ask for questions. But the idea here is to give a little bit of a historical retrospective on the program. Talk about how you've emerged from the financial crisis of 2008 and began the decade with a lending program of about $150 million a year, reservations. And how the financial crisis created a set of tremendous change in both the mortgage market with respect to the regulations regarding single-family loans, and also the financial markets with respect to how you fund those loans. And you, IHCDA, as an active participant in those markets, needed to respond to change and to show in this presentation how you were extremely successful in that regard. And what we know as we go through this retrospective and come to the present, we know that change is always occurring. And so today, what we're confronted with is a new set of challenges and a new set of changes that we need to deal with. So, what I'd like to do is, we've talked about the team. This presentation is available for everyone, and we've talked about both the internal team, and then we've introduced the external team here. This chart tells the whole story, and I could probably spend 20 minutes talking about this chart, but that's not a good use of everyone's time. But what I want to do is I want to highlight a few things on this chart, and then what we're going to do is we're going to drill down into various components of this chart, and we're going to break up this 10-year decade, this last decade, and break it up into kind of 3 chunks. And what this chart is designed to do is to explain how your world, just like the financial markets imposed change on you, how you responded to change, and how you were able to grow the program. And when I talk about growing the program, I'm talking about the green bars, which is your total reservations in millions of dollars, where we start at the left with, just looking at the green bars, we start with about $150 million annual program. And we grow that up to $350 million in 2016. And then you can see we were able to maintain it, and now we've seen a little bit of contraction. So what are the challenges? Why is that? So before we get to the challenges, let's talk a little bit about the 2 ways in which you finance your home ownership program, either the bond program or the TBA and market program. So first off, the bond program. You sell bonds and you buy loans, and you bring them onto your balance sheet, and you hold those loans for the duration of their life. Now, you don't actually hold whole loans. You are holding securitized mortgage-backed securities, which are federally guaranteed wrappers around a pool of loans. And that type of financing vehicle was the tradition for all HFAs across the country for 30 or 40 years, until the crisis. And when the crisis hit, folks were selling in the tax-exempt municipal bond market to finance those. So selling tax-exempt municipal bonds to finance the purchase of loans and to hold them on a balance sheet. That is the blue set of columns on this presentation. You can see that we started with 100% of your activity in 2010 was financed through bonds. But you could see, just by looking at those early years, that we had a massive contraction, and we had to introduce a new financing mechanism, and that was what's called the TBA market. TBA stands for to be announced. And this is a market that is what Rich kind of indicated was what we call the spot market, where you don't actually own a loan, you partner with your lenders, you make an IHCDA loan, but you simultaneously sell that loan in the spot market. And so you never actually own the loan. What you do is sell it and receive a profit. So it's a different way of making money in the market, as opposed to a bond program which earns you an annuity over time. You have a spot sale which earns you a one-time profit. And what you'll see here, and what we'll talk about in a little bit more in depth, is how you had to respond to the inability to sell municipal bonds to finance your market. You had to transition to the TBA market. And this TBA market was available for you, and it was extremely successful. But as you can see from this chart here, which are the yellow columns, that market is starting to disappear. And so we're now confronted with pivoting back into the bond market. That's the big picture that we're going to talk about. Just to kind of put it into perspective, this is the mix of your reservations going throughout the decade, where you were 100% in bonds, and then ended up with 100% almost 100% of your loan origination in TBA. An extremely volatile period for everyone in the market. And now, we call this the fish chart. You'd rather be at the head as opposed to at the tail or crossing over. So if there's anything you take away from this, is what we're looking for balance, right? The whipsaw of the up and down, while you've been able to perform and had an extremely successful program, ultimately our goal is to find balance in the market and to use both financing mechanisms for you to achieve your mission goals. So let's just break this down, and I will go a little bit quicker now just out of respect of time, but let's just break this down. These are peering in a little bit deeper to the 2010 to 2012 period. $150 million of production, the green bar, all financed with bonds. And then as we were emerging from the crisis, as the feds introduced their quantitative easing, which was basically the feds running out of, feds had lowered interest rates basically to zero, short-term rates to zero. They had no more tools left. And so the next tool that they deployed, highly unconventional, was to go and to build up the money supply by buying agency and treasury securities. So that's what quantitative easing was, and that created a huge opportunity for mortgage lenders to sell their mortgage-backed securities, basically IHCDA mortgage-backed securities, to the feds. And this environment was a temporary, fuel on the fire to stoke the economy, to build up the money supply. And in 2011, 2012, IHCDA began to participate in this and began to migrate from the bond program to the TBA program. And this was the beginning of sort of a new era for IHCDA. 14% annual growth. So the net result was very positive. We went from $150 million annual program to a $198 million program in those 3 years. And it was a response to the fact, there were two things working here. One was the tax-exempt bond market for housing bonds was stressful. It was difficult to sell bonds in that market during that time. You could sell them. We certainly had HFAs who went all the way through the market, but you had to reduce your profitability, your expected profitability by selling in the bond market. And the TBA market was extremely profitable. And then by 2012, we were at 23%. We had moved off 0 and gone to 23% TBA. Just to step back, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. We've got some slides in the presentation regarding bond program dynamics. But just to come back, bond programs, selling bonds, putting them on the balance sheet, earning, the goal is to earn full spread, which is a tax term that the RBC and the JP Morgan folks and Tyler and I, we live with all the time. We're always looking to achieve full spread. Full spread is 1 1/8, which is, it's a complicated 1 1/8. Net, it's about 50 or 60 basis points of economic spread that will flow back into the authority to run, to build up the balance sheet and to run other programs and potentially to subsidize other activities. The world that you are used to seeing from your financial presentation is bifurcated. You have a single-family balance sheet, and you have a general fund, which is what folks are typically used to looking at, is the general fund. The general fund was the financing vehicle and the financing recipient of all of the TBA income that you earned. And so you've seen a big run-up in your general fund income statement, principally because of the TBA activity. What you might not have been as focused on is the fact that your single-family balance sheet, which is separate and distinct from the general fund, has actually seen a contraction in the overall balance sheet because there were not new bonds being put onto the balance sheet, and so therefore that annuity income which was being earned inside that balance sheet was contracting over time. So you've got two financing vehicles and you've got two different financial entities. And I think it's important to kind of keep track of that as you kind of see financial performance, so you have a recognition as to why financial performance is changing in the general fund, principally related to TBA activity. Wonderful when it's going up, but maybe a little bit painful when TBA activity is coming down. Any questions on what I've gone through so far? TBA dynamics, what we've talked about, selling loans and earning a one-time profit. And this is hitting your unrestricted general fund, right? We've got a restricted balance sheet, which is the bond program, and we've got an unrestricted general fund, which is where you're funding a lot of your programs. And as I've mentioned, wholly dependent on volume. The only way you were making money on TBA was by generating volume. And so volume was driving income statement profitability. So let's go the next 4 years. Now we're going 2013 to 2016. This is the TBA era. This is when QE was on fire. The feds had their foot on the gas. There was a tremendous amount of liquidity in the market, and folks were, the feds were bidding up these agency securities and being able to essentially pass on the profits to you folks as you were making loans to stoke the economy. And we went from a $198 million program in 2013 all the way up to $350 million in 2016. An extremely impressive growth, more than doubling the production as using this reservation metric. Why? We talked about that a little bit. Diminished spreads on the tax-exempt bonds. It was difficult to sell tax-exempt bonds. People were doing tax-exempt municipal, funding their tax-exempt municipal bond programs and earning basically zero economic spread. Just to kind of keep going, they were willing to do that. Some folks were doing TBA, some folks were doing bonds. You folks pivoted in, that earned you 20% annual growth. Very impressive during that period. But what Blake recognized back in 2016 was the fact that the TBA market was not sustainable, that the feds were not going to keep their foot on the gas forever, and therefore they needed you needed to restart your bond program. And that's what happened in 2016. And that was important to figure out, to make sure that you had the opportunity to begin the pivot back from TBA back into bonds. So, and that's what we've seen. What we've seen is, the highlight of this screen is the dramatic contraction in the TBA reservation activity, which translates into TBA profitability and general fund income statement revenues. It was not sustainable. It was a sort of, it was a nice run, but now we have to refocus on bonds. And this is showing how that focus has begun. 2019 is projected. We've looked at the first 4 months and we've seen a contraction. We're recognizing that there are some challenges in our programs. And so what I'm going to pivot to now a little bit is talk about where we are today, and what are some of the things that we think we can introduce to IHCDA's lending community, as Rich has talked about. June is Home Ownership Month, in terms of an expanded down payment assistance program, what we call a DPA program. We talked about rising interest rates. There's a lot of reasons why the TBA has come down. This is an interest rate chart. I'm gonna keep going here, just in the interest of time. So, where are we? We have challenges, but we have opportunities. We know that TBA volume is limited. And so if we want to improve the earnings of IHCDA, either in the general fund or in the single family fund, we need to do a better job of finding our lenders and finding our ultimate borrowers and providing the programs that we need. And what we have recognized across the country is that DPA is the biggest impediment, down payment assistance is the biggest impediment to affordable home ownership across the country. And so many HFAs have broadened their DPA program. IHCDA has had a tradition inside the first-time home buyer, inside the bond program, of having a 3.5% upfront grant. And that was sort of okay, and that was providing necessary help for these borrowers. But what we have recognized and what other HFAs have recognized is that down payment assistance level is not enough. And so what we're recommending and what we can see is financeable and can be profitable for IHCDA is an expansion and a deepening of that program. And so at the moment, as I said, a 3.5% grant, what we're imagining is something between 5 and 7%, a second loan note program. Probably a 6% right now, I think, is what we're migrating to. Second lien loan note. So that would be repayable as opposed to a grant where you just kind of give the money away. We're going to give them more money, but we're going to have an expectation that they repay us. And economically, that's going to be a win-win, we believe, from our standpoint. We believe that the homeowner is going to allow the homeowner to access better markets, to avoid things like seller concessions, to have a more even playing field out in the market, and then also is going to be able to grow your balance sheet and contribute to the annuity income that you can earn from the spread of doing these types of programs with a first loan wrapped as an MBS and a second loan held on the balance sheet, all financed with tax-exempt municipal bonds. And in this market, we think we can do this program at full spread, which is the kind of the gold standard of doing a bond program. And so we recognize that we've got challenges ahead, but we also recognize that we've got the potential, especially, and I think the timing is really good right now with June coming up, to roll out a new program. We've actually helped other HFAs roll out similar types of DPA programs across the country, and we've seen their production increase dramatically, 20, 30, 40, 70% in some cases. Now, we don't know where we're going to go. Every state, every community is local. All the markets are different. But we do think that this is the best way to grow the annuity income and reduce our dependence and reliance on the TBA income, which is just going to continue to shrink through time. And ultimately, you, as the board, will have an opportunity to tap that annuity income. To the extent that you want annuity income in your general fund, we can probably figure out ways and mechanisms to get that annuity income out of the bond fund on that separate restricted balance sheet and figure out ways to bring it into the general fund if that's where you need that money. Because I'm sensitive to the fact that you are used to having a nice flow of net income inside the general fund, and we, with the help of a good team here, should be able to figure out ways. Now, might not be able to replace it dollar for dollar, and it's going to take time. Balance sheet is an annuity income; it's not an upfront profit. But we think there are definitely opportunities. Any questions? I went pretty quickly there.
Do we have any idea the dollar amount that we would be looking, I mean, when you say that from 3.5% to the 5 to 7%, do we have any idea what impact that has on the outflow in the beginning?
So from the borrower standpoint, in terms of, the borrower is basically going to end up with something like $8,000 of down payment assistance, $9,000 of down payment assistance to help with closing costs, to help with down payment, to cover those types of issues. And we've gone from 4,000, we're basically doubling, going from 4 to 8 roughly. With about $120,000 average loan. Is that about where it's kept? 120,000? 128, right? So it's up a little bit. So yeah, that's real fuel, I think, to is a real benefit to the homeowner, and then we think that's going to translate into increased production, because what that's going to do is it's going to give your borrowers a competitive advantage relative to, they're going to hold a competitive advantage relative to what they're going to be able to get out in the commercial space without that depth of DPA. So we think we can have a really low rate. We're thinking, maybe 450 or something like that. So, 450 with $8,000 in their pocket to go out and get a loan, and a 30-year fixed rate loan, right? No funny business here. We're doing 30-year fixed rate loans, no adjustables, nothing like that. And we think that's going to resonate. And the bond market is tremendously strong right now. We're pricing deals during this month, and we don't know how long it's going to go, but at the moment, there's been a big shift of money into the municipal market as a whole, and folks like you who have AAA rated credits backed by agency securities are a tremendous, tremendous demand for housing bonds right now. And so the timing couldn't be better in terms of selling bonds and being able to generate this annuity and build that balance sheet back up again.
Hey, Rich, or Kim, I'm back on page 19. Maybe can you give us where we are currently with our down payment assistance program in terms of the percentage? It mentions here going from a 3.5% to, as Jeremy was talking about, a 6%. You maybe talk a little bit more about kind of where we are with our down payment assistance program and what does that mean in terms of that change that Jeremy was talking about from a homeowner standpoint. What does that mean for them?
Yeah, let me take a swing at it, and
Sure.
then if I don't answer it, we'll get the expert up here and they can answer it. So today, we give roughly a 3 to 3.5% down payment assistance to a first-time home buyer, and it's a 2-year grant. So if they're in the home for 2 years, they get to keep the money. That 3 or 3.5% really kind of covers closing costs and prepaids. Most of the loans we're doing are FHA that require a 3% down payment. When we go to a 6% DPA, we now allow the homeowner to cover closing costs and prepaids, plus have some dollars to go into the deal. And it's a tight housing market now. It's really tight at the lower end of the market, as we know. And so homes are going fully priced. The homes that we're financing generally get sold for close to market price. We have someone in our organization yesterday who listed their home Monday morning at 8:30 and had 4 showings yesterday afternoon. So this allows our homeowner, our prospective customer, to go in and not only carry closing costs, but also have some real money to put down, and they don't have to ask for seller concessions. They don't have to go in and ask the seller to give some money back at closing. They can compete with a full offer with a full buyer. And as Jeremy referenced, given how robust the market is, we can finance all of that in the coupon today and the bond offering. The other thing that it does for us, of course, is today in our down payment assistance, we get very little of it back. Most people take our 3 or 3.5%. They stay there at least 2 years. That money's gone. The proposal that we're working on now would be closer to and we're still tweaking this, but it would be closer to a 15-year forgivable loan, so that if they refinance or leave within the first 15 years, we get some or all of a portion of it back to us. Not with an interest carry, but we begin to recover money and bring it back in, so we can recycle those dollars for other home buyers. Is that what
Exactly,
you wanted, Jake?
exactly.
Yeah.
And can you maybe just touch on, Jeremy, the burn rate on our single-family loans in terms
Yeah, so
of?
the average life of a loan, our loan portfolio bounces around between 7 and 9 years, the average life of a loan. So we'll get a lot of that back. I think depending upon how fast loans prepay, so we're in a real low rate environment. So if rates go up, because they're not going to come down much further, right? The average life of that portfolio will extend further because people will stay in their home to enjoy that rate. So I think today we think that if we had a 15-year forgivable that we'd recover, is it 60%, Jeremy? Is that roughly?
Yeah, that's.
Roughly 60% of those dollars would flow back to us.
Thank you.
What do lenders, how do lenders look at this second? Is it from?
Yeah, so from our standpoint, it doesn't, there's no debt to income
There is
requirements
none?
because we're not requiring any payment. It's a zero coupon loan. And it just, if you're there, in the proposal we have, if you're there 15 years, we forgive it. So from a lender perspective, it doesn't have any kind of impact. One of the scenarios we've considered and others are doing today, and it's popular, is a 1% coupon, 10-year fully amortizing. So the homeowner is actually making payments to us at a 1% rate over 10 years, and it burns off that way. And of course, there you have some debt to income requirements that you have to work through.
Yeah. And so we've looked at multiple different, Jeremy's helped us look at multiple different scenarios in terms of how we structure 0%, 1% amortized versus non-amortized, and looking at what does that revenue forecast present to us, and limits the potential homeowners, home buyers, because if we think about the debt coverage ratio, it could limit and remove some of the potential qualified home buyers if we increase. Now, what we're thinking about, what's it like, about $30 a month extra, I think is what we're thinking in terms of what an average DPA loan would be if it was amortized over 15 years with a 1% interest rate. But if we go 0%, you don't have that adverse effect on maybe disqualifying a small percentage of potential homeowners.
Plus, by increasing the DPA, he's going in from day one with more equity, so the first lien holder's got to be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest challenge that we have right now is the seller concessions, and our homeowners, our home buyers have to, in most cases, provide some kind of concession from the seller, and that's just, in this market, it's really difficult for them to achieve that. Did we leave anything out, Kim?
Well, the equity doesn't change, it's still at 3.5% down payment. The difference on the 6,000 goes to 8,000 goes towards closing costs for prepaid. So effectively, we're in a market right now where a buyer comes up and makes an offer, and as Jake said, you have to have seller concessions. I don't have enough money to basically close the whole deal out. Yeah, I got my down payment from Indiana Housing, but I still gotta pay my appraisal, my repair report, my title insurance, my survey, my closing costs, my, insurance and taxes. So all that comes into play. Where am I gonna get that money from? What we've done is realize that we can actually help them with those funds. Now they truly have 100% financing under the same auspices of an FHA loan, same credit restrictions, all that's still the same. Only now they compete with any other offer that's out there that has the cash for the fall. Does that make sense? So now we've got a program out here that's equal to anything else that anybody offers. So when the cohort gets 5 offers, my offer could be one of those, whereas before it wouldn't get up to the table, would it? It's our concession.
Rich, I appreciate the pullback of the camera lens to see kind of that trajectory over the last 10 years. I think it tells a story of how IHCDA, Jake, under your leadership, and Rich, Kim, Lee, Tom, Dee Dee, I don't know who else is back there from your division, but have really looked at the market and tried to navigate in a way that makes best sense for this organization. So I think it sounds like this is kind of that next pivot as you see TBA going down, and and make us a competitive option for.
Mark, I appreciate that observation. That's one of the things that, I wasn't here during that time frame, but we had terrific leadership. And then when the world came to an end, right, we were all here in 10, 11, 12. We know how bad it was. And yet this organization not only continued to help first-time homebuyers, but grew their business. I wasn't here, but man, I'm proud of the work the folks did, and I appreciate that observation. Thank you.
You see that green bar kind of in that, back to that 350 range, is 250 more the reality? Do you have a sense of what your goal is for total?
Yeah, so our goal is not to give up market share and continue to grow, and we've seen a decline, so that's part of what this is. We're gonna tweak the down payment assistance. The TBA market will be there, but at a diminished rate, and we're gonna try to drive more volume through the bond portfolio. So that, our reaction to that declining line is to change the TBA, and if that gets us the volume that we can handle, we'll be pleased, and if it isn't, we'll tweak it some more. We'll figure out a way to fulfill our primary mission, which is helping first-time home buyers get in homes in Indiana, so. Yeah, so I hope we see that turn around and take off. We're a little constrained. There's housing supply in Indiana isn't as tight as it is in other markets, but there is a limited supply of homes here. It's not like there aren't home sales and homes for sale, but that's tightened up considerably, so.
Great. Great discussion.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. And Rich, I think you're here to discuss the Lake Meadows bond recommendation?
Well, if we could,
Okay.
if you don't mind, if I could just shift the agenda, we have a resolution for the, I think it's the next item down for the single-family mortgage
Okay.
revenue bonds. It just segues into what we did, and if
Sure.
it's acceptable to you, we'll do it, and then we'll jump into
Let's do that.
Yeah, thank you. So we're back again to do the second resolution of the year, issuing debt to finance our mortgage purchases. Again, as Mark Pascarella reminds us all, this is non-recourse financing to the authority. This debt sits in a bond resolution and is secured with either the investments we make or the mortgage loan. So we have, the general fund has no liability in this. But this is our second offering of the year. We typically tend to be a fairly small issuer. We like to issue bonds as close to our need in the marketplace as possible. So we tend to do 2 or 3 issues a year, and we like to take away interest rate by issuing in the bond market at the same time we're making mortgage loans, so we don't have a mismatch of rates. This will more than likely be a fixed rate issue. The markets are pretty robust. We have asked for the ability to do some variable rate, but we haven't done variable rate in a year, and I don't think we'll need to do it here. We've asked for a little bit larger range than we have in the past. So our last issue was 60 million? 50 million. 50 million. Yeah, we did 50 million, 55 million in our last issue. We've asked for a little bit larger range here because we're gonna go into June home ownership month with a brand-new DPA product, and we're hoping it spikes volume. We won't be funding this until July or August. So we've asked for a little bit of leeway here. If our DPA and our new programs hit the street running, we may want to upsize our issue a little bit to be flexible and move with the market. So we've asked for a range up to $90 million. Probably will be somewhere in the 55 to 60, but if we have great market acceptance and if rates are good and buyers want our bonds, we may want to step that up a little bit. So that's what we're asking for. Again, non-recourse, second issue of the year. There could be, a third issue either towards the end of the year or another issue at the first of the year. So.
Any questions for Rich?
Yeah, Mark and I met with Rich last week to discuss this in some detail. Appreciate your time, Rich. Appreciate you wanting to, being flexible on both the size and the fixed and variable, because the markets can change. But yeah, it's a good time to be out there, so, yeah, it's a good time.
Good.
And they do, the IFA is just terrific. We work hand in hand with Mark or Andy or Dan Hughey when we do this stuff, and they know full well what we're doing, and they're really helpful. Good partners for us.
Great. Any other comments, questions? I think we're ready for your resolution, Rich.
Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approves the issuance of the 2019 Series B bonds and related transactions pursuant to the attached resolution as recommended by staff.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. And now, Rich, do you want to discuss the
Thank you.
Lake
Yes.
Meadows
I'd be
Board
pleased to. Yeah.
recommendation? Thank you.
So you saw this in our June 2018 meeting. This is Lake Meadows. It's an assisted living project in Fishers, Indiana, 123 units. We approved both the bond debt and the LIHTC credits, and in this instance, they've asked us to be the issuer of that debt. So this resolution really allows us to just be the issuer of the debt piece of it. Again, it's non-recourse to us. A project that we've seen and really hasn't been a lot of change to as they've gone through the development stage of it. So.
Any questions? I think we're ready for your resolution.
Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve the Series 2019 Multifamily Housing Revenue Bonds Lake Meadows ALLP project pursuant to the attached resolution as recommended by staff.
We have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank you,
Motion
Board.
is approved. Thank you, Rich. And Jacob?
Yes.
It's your turn.
Okay, wow.
It's your turn.
Good. I'll make it short. I know we're running a little long today. I want to just go back and just thank Rich, Kim, Lee, all of our team at IHCDA on the single-family side for their dedication and their commitment to continuing to fulfill our mission when it specifically related to the reason why the agency was actually formed was homeownership, and continue to see that. I'm just really proud of our team. Also proud of the relationships that we have formed with CFX and Jeremy and his team, our bankers at RBC, and JP Morgan. I know Jeff's here as well. And then obviously with Barnes and Thornburg and Ice Miller, thank you for your leadership and helping us make sure that we're continuing to find ways to be relevant in a changing market. So thank you very much for all of that. So I want to mention at the last board meeting, I mentioned the magazine. We didn't have a copy of it, but I think you have a copy of the magazine for you this morning. And Reverend Adrian Brooks is on the cover from Evansville with Memorial CDC. I want to acknowledge the team at IHCDA who helps put this together, because Jeremy showed a lot of great graphs and a lot of just tremendous, as you look at the graphs and you think about the key performance indicators that Danny and Jeff were talking about earlier in their presentations. Behind that, there are real people, and there are Hoosiers behind that. And this magazine tries to capture that human element and that story of success. And so our team at IHCDA, hats off to them for the great work that they do in taking these programs and telling the human story of it and what the impact it has. And so if anything that you take away from our magazine every quarter that we try to release is there's actually a real Hoosier behind this, and that we're improving their quality of life. So that's what the magazine's all about, and hopefully you get an opportunity to take that and see some of those great stories, what we do impact in our communities. So just a little bit about, I know the board likes to know a little bit about what I've been up to. I'm on Fifth Third Bank's advisory community team. And so this last week I was with Fifth Third Bank, working with them on continuing to help them identify opportunities where they can invest in the state of Indiana, in the Midwest, and in, obviously in their banking area. But being a part of that, I'm obviously very humbled to be part of their community advisory team on that. Also last week I had an opportunity to continue our relationship with Purdue University for the Center for High Performance Building, and we had the opportunity to present to several of their membership organizations who partner with the Center for High Performance Building, a lot of manufacturers in heating and cooling and appliances, and so we went, Evan, Thea and I went up there, presented to a whole host of manufacturers, some in Indiana, some outside the state, but to look for opportunities to partner with them with our moving forward rural development. Today, I think we're closer to like 1,000 units that could potentially be rehabbed and preserved for affordable housing for the next 30 years, and the opportunity to bring in some of these partnerships to help with containing the cost of some of these mechanical systems through bulk purchasing is what we were having a conversation with. And so we were warmly receptive from them, and there could be some potential opportunities for some partnerships that we traditionally do not have. So we're really excited about that, and the three teams are working. Just a quick update on where these three developers are with their moving forward rural development initiative. We're continuing to work with USDA to identify ways we can streamline the capital needs assessments and physical needs assessments that are currently being done over the next 2 months, and how IHCDA and USDA can work together to make sure that that's a seamless process and that we're not duplicating work. So that discussion's happening. We're also continuing with Evan's leadership to have biweekly calls with the developers and USDA on their progress. Our timeline is to get these applications in by October. There's a lot of work that has to be done to do that. There's site control, there's the capital needs assessments, the market studies. All of those things are currently in progress, but we're making sure that we're staying on time and hitting our benchmarks with that. So that's also been taking place, and that's kind of just an update on where we are with our moving forward RD. So just real quick, Mark, I know you mentioned monthly updates. We do have a list, and I'll be happy to provide that list to you. Maybe, Sheena, we could work to get the board the schedule for the updates that we have already identified for each month for the rest of the year to give updates. And so if there's anything on that list that you think that we're missing that you would like for us to add, we'd be happy to do that. So, but I'll make sure we share that schedule of updates with you. So next month, the June board meeting is here in Indianapolis, but it's not at IHCDA. We're actually going off on site. We're going to go to the Florence Fay Senior Apartments. It's a historic elementary school on the Near East side of Indianapolis that was preserved and then reused for senior housing. And so we'll be in the gymnasium at the Florence Fay Senior Apartments there. And so I'm expecting, I've been there before a couple times, and I'm assuming that we're going to have some residents who are excited to see us. So that's going to be fun to be part of that and have our board meeting there. I also just want to thank the board for allowing us to go on the road and to be part and to really be part of a community and see firsthand what's taking place with these initiatives that we invest into. So with that, Lieutenant Governor, that's my update. So
Any questions for Jay? Is there any further business to come before the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We stand adjourned.